you? When did that happen?
December.
Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. This is a 25-year-old Patrick McGill. We're also joined by John Hughes. Happy birthday.
He's not 25.
Recently. Gentlemen, as always, lots to talk about in this season of all seasons. Somehow, John, we're still in the fight. And this week, our focus goes to Europe. How are you feeling about the European aspect of this season?
Well, of this season so far, great. Of this season as of tomorrow night, not so good. I think with the loss of Engels is massive, especially in light of the Ox not being able to play. I think it's just huge. I'm not sure it's something we can overcome unless there's a change of formation. I mean, my idea would be go to 4-5 win, hit them on the break, just try and pack the midfield. We don't have any good midfield options, so just putting as many in as we can might be the idea. But you never know in Europe, because obviously people come out to play against us, so they're not going to be sitting in. So it gives us a different opportunity to express ourselves, and I hope we're able to do that. But it's very much, I suppose, is it any different than any other game this season? You're going into it in hope rather than expectation, So I'm not sure there's a massive difference, but there is for me. After recent games, I'm a lot less confident about Stuttgart, who are a good side. I mean, what are they, 5th in the Bundesliga? And they've had a tremendous run in Europe this year, especially, their home games. They've lost a couple of away games, but again, not against bad sides. So, hope rather than the expectation. I would love to say I'm a believer and we can definitely do it and all the rest of it, but I don't know. I think it might be a bit much for us given the current state of play.
Well, this is an interesting thing about Europe, because as the season's progressed, I think more and more people have tapped in and out of it. They've looked at the importance of European football on a wider scale, Patrick, and then they've looked at this season specifically and they've said, what's best for us in the title race? Is it to stay in Europe or not? And I'm going down the route of saying, well, as long as we're in there and it gives us that confidence and it gives us that momentum, I see that's a good thing. My concern comes into whether or not we've got a strong enough squad to rotate. That's my big concern, Patrick. How are you feeling about this week and the fact that we do have a European game before we get back to league business?
Obviously excited to watch Celtic in Europe, but it's not that I want Celtic to lose, but I'm very cautious of what happens if we, somehow pull off a win. I'm not saying somehow, because Stuttgart are a good team and they're probably a better team than us at the minute. But it wouldn't be a giant killing for us to go through. I think it would probably be an upset, but it's not a massive imbalance on the park. As John says, Engels is missing. That is going to be a massive miss. And then just our squad this season. I mean, the quality obviously hasn't been there for large parts of the season, and now we're actually down on numbers and also guys that we can trust, in my opinion. I mean, Jota's been out all season. Carter Vickers has been out for months. Johnston has been out for months. Engels is now out for, I think, at least 6 weeks. I think I heard yesterday. I'm right in saying. And then guys that you can trust. I mean, you've seen guys getting hooked after 45 minutes. Away to Kilmarnock, guys like Hatate, who, God knows what's going on there. I'm not sure I could trust him with a Celtic jersey ever again. Even the defence as well. I mean, Schmeichel for that second goal. Trusty and Scales throughout the game, I thought were quite poor. Trusty in particular. Trusty's one of these guys. He's 80% of the time he's 8 out of 10, and 20% of the time he's 0 out of 10. He just has these disasters out of nowhere, and you just don't know what type of Austin Trusty you're going to get. So it's about guys that you can trust, guys that you have available. So I think for us to go on any sort of run in Europe would seriously hamper our ambitions to win the league. I would love us to go a run in Europe. I mean, Martin O'Neill's the manager. We're in the Europa League, and these are the sort of stages where we're all criticising the board because, these are the stages that we want to compete at and get by and go on a bit of a deep run in these sort of second tier and third tier European competitions if we're not in the Champions League. But even just these next 6 games, the next 3 weeks, it is such a tough run for us. and I'm, as a Celtic fan, just looking to sort of get through it.
Mm.
Personally. So, a valiant performance, but then, sort of going out narrowly without having to play extra time in the second leg is almost what I'm hoping for, because I think looking at the league and how important it is that we win the league this season, um, I don't think progression would help that cause, if that makes sense. So I'm not hoping that we go out, but it's definitely not the worst thing in the world. Just looking at all the factors.
I think that's the two camps, Patrick. The camp you're in, because you would never hope that Celtic lose because you're a Celtic fan. But the camp I'm in is let's go as deep as we possibly can. Now, I don't think we're good enough to go a great deal further, to be honest with you. And would it surprise me if this was our last round? No, it wouldn't. But to be honest with you, I'm surprised we got this far. At certain times this season, I thought Europe was out the window. I was never willing to give it up because I always speak about European football. I always think it's something that should always be on that whiteboard in the CE's office. You should have a vision. You should have an ambition in European football. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to have a big shout out to every single person who has subscribed over the years to a Celtic State of Mind. And what's happened is, talking of whiteboards, gentlemen, and I mean this sincerely, I used to have a whiteboard up in the old Dalkeith studio, right? And I used to have all the subscribers, and I thought to myself, how great would it be to get up to 5,000? And then it was 10, and then you start making the targets, and then the big, massive target, it was like quarter of the way to 100,000. Imagine getting 25,000 subscribers. That would be incredible. But since then, it has come on leaps and bounds. It really has. The trajectory's been incredible. People are subscribing, people are watching, giving us the thumbs up and all this kind of stuff. And we'll repay you with that. With more content. We are planning on having far more content as we move through the end of this season. But there you go, 40,000 subscribers. That's incredible. If you think about 40,000 people at Celtic Park and visualise that, it's really incredible. So anyway, I did say that whoever would be the 40,000th subscriber, easy for me to say, would get us an Acsom swag bag. And it's StewBoy23. Now, I don't know who StewBoy23 is. However, if you are watching, if you know Stu, then let him know. You can get in touch with us on here via the email address that's on the YouTube channel or on the social media channels. And we will get some goodies out to you. StewBoy, there you go, 40,000. Brilliant. Next target, John, 50. We'll go for the 50K.
Oh, sorry, I'm confused by what you were saying, though, Paul John. You had targets that involved progression,
yeah,
getting better.
Oh yes.
What did you not? Were you not comfortable with the status quo? I mean, what is this getting better nonsense?
It's incredible, John. I know it was a very forward-thinking, abstract idea at the time, and I compared it to other platforms in the same kind of genre as well. Yeah. I looked at other platforms that might even be of a same ilk, and I thought, how can I reach that?
I can only assume you're some sort of rogue who clearly hasn't won it past his principal shareholder or his CEO. I don't know what sort of behaviour this is.
I've been called worse than a rogue, John, I'll tell you that much. So thank you, everybody, as I say, for subscribing. What do you get for subscribing? Well, you get notified, and we're also going to be recording a hell of a lot more content. And if you're a subscriber, there's a way of being able to give it to subscribers before the general public and all that stuff. So we'll be looking into that as well as we move on. Thanks everybody for getting involved today. We have got Jai67 saying Hibs is the bigger game. The league is everything. I get it. I absolutely get it, Jai. But when it comes to Martin O'Neill, John, and I seen there that he was honoured by being one of an elite band of managers who has managed over 1,000 games in senior football. Absolutely incredible. And by the way, he had already managed over 1,000 games prior to coming in back to Celtic. It's not like that was his 1,000th game at the weekend, but they've got round to honouring him. And even though it is difficult domestically, John, I just get the sense that Martin will still try to go as deep as he can in this competition.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the most frustrating thing, we know practically the situation that we're in, but forget Europe is the cry that the board dreams of. Do you know what I mean? Forget Europe. I will not bother about Europe. They have getting us conditioned to be completely not bothered about Europe, but absolutely focused on a league because we're now in a, in a 3-horse race. It should be a 1-horse race with 2 other 3-legged horses. So it's so depressing that that's the position we're in, and that is the position where you can't deny the reality of it. There's no point in saying, "Oh, forget Europe is the refrain of the board, and we must deny this and push on and all the rest of it." We're struggling. I mean, we're absolutely struggling. Now that's the position they've put us in. So, we'll do the best we can. Martin O'Neill will push on. I have no doubt. I doubt he has in him to even think about, what do you mean, just, quitting a game or put out a B team or something like that. I'd be fascinated to see what he did. If we get battered tomorrow night, I'd be fascinated to see who he played the following game, because, I've never really known him to rotate like that. But, again, we have massive challenges here. The manager is pretty much working miracles, although he's not, he's not exempt from the odd mistake, particularly in selection. But he is doing the very best he can with these guys. And it's clear that the players are doing the best they can as well, some of them are. You go back to, for instance, you're saying about Trusty. I don't blame Trusty. He had a bad game, so that's not something you can blame for particularly. He had a bad game. He's been very good in loads of games this season. That was not a good game from him. So is that something you can hammer him for? It's worthy of mention, if you're totting up there for him. But no, Hatate, on the other hand, I don't know what's going on there, as Patrick said, in terms of, it just shows you the managers of opinion of McCown and Bernardo, to Hatate, who's been an empty jersey for this full year and nearly for a year and a half, is getting in front of them. He must think that those 2 boys are absolute rubbish, and we're going to have to play one of them, if not 2 of them, tomorrow night. So, but Hatate, the issue with Hatate is not that he's not productive anymore. That was one thing. He'd be in and out of games, he would be turning over possession and all the rest of it. It's now he's a liability. He's an actual liability. He's a net negative to the team. You know what I mean? So he is causing trouble for us. He is not only is he not producing for us, he is making life much more difficult. And Callum McGregor is basically way too old to be playing on a midfield 1, which is basically what you've got. So Hatate is an empty jersey. Negrin's off up trying to poach goals. God bless him for that, because he's very good at it. Yeah, but I mean, it's basically Callum in the midfield, essentially on his own, for the most part, because it's so easy for them to mark him out because he doesn't have any support. He's back to goal and he's doing a lot of pointing, and I think he feels pressured. I think you saw the release after that win. I mean, that was a man under pressure. He went ballistic, and you could see his passion and how seriously he takes it. So you can never ever say that Callum McGregor gives anything less than 100%. But it's too easy for teams to mark him out. There's no one else. Why would you even bother marking Hatate? What's he going to do? Trip over, pass it backwards, lose the ball in possession, foul someone, get sent off, give away a penalty. Make your list of things he could do to damage the team. And then Benji's off up the top of the pitch going, I'll just stand 2 yards from goal and see what happens. So, it's not, it doesn't make for a functional midfield. And the difference when Oxlade-Chamberlain come on, I mean, good grief. That was ridiculous how much of a difference it made. One decent player in the midfield along with Callum McGregor, totally different game. And it's not like he was trying to do anything outrageous. But you know what? He managed to complete a 5-yard pass every now and again, which was remarkable. Some of them were forward even. It was incredible to see. It was like a revelation. So, look, it's a big loss about Engels being out, because for some reason, and people have said they can't really say why, but the midfield definitely functions functions better with Engels in it, regardless of your opinion on our £25 million midfielder who everyone thinks we should sell for, you know, 3 bob and a packet of peanuts or something. You know, he's got an engine, he's got a pass, he's got a tackle. He may not always be in the game, but it works much better when he is. It's simple, you know. If you want to know how good he is, just take him out and see what happens, and that's exactly what we've got now. So, I want, you know, I would love to see us going on a run, because I think, you know, players are going to be come back from injury, and we're going to have Oxlade-Chamberlain in there. And can we still win this league and go on a run in Europe? Potentially. But I mean, I don't think any of us are confident in any given game. So, you know, I don't think we're going into any game saying, "Oh, this is a great thing." So, you know, it's not like Seville. You know what I mean? But you are following that and thinking we can do this. But look, I'm just so loath to give up on any target that we still have. You know, I don't want to be. You know, I'm realistic, but I don't want to be defeatist. I don't just want to say just leave it and just forget about it, because I don't want to be give the board the pleasure of having me become one of their acolytes, where we're just basically saying, "Oh, well, this is just give up on everything. It's just the league that matters. Do we need the cup? No, we don't need the cup either. Just the league." You know, so one target a year, and they'll be over the moon with that, and then. You know, it's already, that's the arguments that are out there. We're all, you know, you see people having them every day online. Oh, what are you talking about? We're still in this competition. We're still in that competition. Oh, we're going, you know, going great. How can you criticise them? And you're just like, where do you start?
It's incredible, John, because, and I've said this before, at the beginning of every season, we talk about the aspirations for the season ahead. And I don't think that it was wrong of any Celtic supporter to look back at last season. I'm not allowed to mention the Bayern Munich game. Oops, I just did. We look back on last season and say, well, let's match that. Let's do that again. And now, John, like you say, there's a lot of Celtic fans, because of the situation we're in, saying, actually, you know what? European football is a distraction now. And it's almost as if, because of the actions of the board, they've put us exactly where their mindset is in the first place. You know, so they've dragged us, I keep saying they've dragged us back into the crab bucket. I've got lots of great comments coming through, and I will be bringing them up. But first of all, there is someone who's not commenting today, and there was a few messages yesterday saying, I hope he's all right. And that long time commenter is Monty, who actually sent me a message to say that not so good news. He's been in the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary for the last 2 weeks with a tear in his aorta, main blood vessel to the heart. All right. He wants to let the regulars know that he is up for the fight. So big shout out to Monty. Hopefully he's fighting fit, and hopefully we can see him back in his own unique way in the comment section. So there you go. There's a wee update for a long-time Acsom contributor. Now, here's the thing. How funny would it have been, Jungle Lion, if the 40,000th subscriber was indeed Lawrence Donegan? What a commotion that would cause, Jungle Lion. Thank you very much for that. Peter McG, just watched the Kelly Given interview on This Is Acsom. Go and check it out on the channel. We need women like her at the top of our club. We also need to get more women back into the Celtic pods. Excellent stuff. I agree with you 100%, but these guys will tell you, certainly in terms of a Celtic state of mind, every time we've had a strong female voice on our show, guys, they get absolutely hounded online. The levels of toxicity go into overdrive simply because it's a woman talking about football. We would love to have more females on the show. Anybody out there watching it saying, I could do a bit of that, give us a shout. We're going to be Glasgow-based a hell of a lot more in the next few months. You might be in the area. You might be an upcoming broadcaster or journalist who wants some experience. Give us a shout. You are more than welcome on Acsom. In the Heat 67, board will speak publicly soon. Pretty much guaranteed they will. The season tickets go out in April. They're not daft, but they think we are. We urge all fans to be strong at renewal time. Big decisions indeed. Patrick, what did you make of the financials and the impact of the Not Another Penny campaign?
Brilliant in a way, I suppose. Obviously, we don't want to do harm to the club, but you've got to send a message to these guys that I think when I think it was the Adidas, was it the Specials range or something came out? I think if you were to buy every single item, it would have came to about £600, £550, which a lot of people, you could pay a mortgage on that. The amount of money that they're after for this merchandise, and when they're not investing in the club, when they're not investing in the team, when they're not investing in communicating with supporters or the supporter experience, why should we bother to buy overpriced merchandise? So I mean that's long been my view, and I'm glad it's a sort of widely held view this season, because we do need to show these guys a message that if they're going to take the easy route and not bother investing, then we're going to do the exact same thing. And we're going to do it until they take accountability and resign, essentially. I found it quite, funny. It was sort of well pointed out that the merchandise section is normally a sort of a key highlight, and they're keen to separate that from every other number. Not this season. They were, I think they banded it in with a few other figures to sort of hide that, a bit of selective accounting from, presumably our financial director. And of course, you've seen, I think revenue was down 28.9%. I think I'm right in saying. I can't remember the numerical figure, but tens of millions of pounds, and that's obviously, I think that's 1st of July to the end of the year, so that's obviously a lot of European money, whether it be sort of gate receipts, TV money, coefficient points, whatever you want to call it. And I'm pretty sure Nicholas Kuhn was sold in the July, so that actually includes Nicholas Kuhn's transfer fee, and obviously all the business that we've done in the window. So it's not came as a great surprise to me, to be honest. Anyone with sort of two brain cells would know that our revenue is going to substantially decrease because of the actions of the board and not preparing over the summer for the Champions League qualifiers. You could argue, in fact, I think most people would argue that it goes back to the Kyogo swap deal with Jota, not signing a striker, still not signing a striker in the summer, and crashing out the Champions League. And no one is yet taking responsibility for that. And just on the latest comment there about the point of the season tickets, I really do wonder how many season tickets we will sell if Michael Nicholson doesn't resign before the season ticket deadline, because the guy is to blame for a massive drop in revenue, exit from the Champions League, a disastrous season where, as John eloquently put it, we're in a 3-horse race with 3 donkeys with 3 legs, or something along those lines. I think I've actually butchered that, John. I apologise, but it's basically 3 teams who aren't very good and keep tripping up. And I think with Martin O'Neill in charge, and the few additions that we've made, and the way that the momentum's going, I think we probably will win the league. But just look at the catalogue of errors that our executive team have made this season, and just imagine for a second that they would have the gall and the nerve to not leave at the end of the season. I mean, I'd be in favour of him leaving right now, but I think you'll probably see it out to the end of the year. And in a way, that will be a boost for season ticket sales, if you can imagine it. So, I think that will obviously have a massive concern for the board. And, obviously the boycott was such a big call. And, looking at the collective, asking people to not renew their season tickets, as we've spoken about and you've said several times, Paul, John, I think a lot of people do it off their own back, especially guys who have to travel long distances. There's a guy in the pub that I go to before the game, there's a guy that travels up from Yorkshire or Cumbria every single match day. And look at what he's been served up this season. No doubt he loves following and supporting Celtic, but totally mismanaged this season. And so it will be interesting to see. I think that's a big decision for the collective, to call for people to not renew their season tickets. I don't know if they would get the buy-in necessarily, but as you've said and as we've discussed, there'll be a good few thousand doing it off their own back if things do not seriously improve towards the summer.
No, you're right. And again, the big thing is the season ticket renewals. But I agree with you there, Patrick, in relation to that. I think people just make their own decisions. They really do. And if you don't feel valued, going back to the interview that we did with Kelly Given, in modern football, and how, back in the day, Patrick, not only was I a Celtic fan, I was a mad football fan. I would have watched any type of football. I was right into English football. I've lost interest in all that. Just the general football side of things, totally disinterested in that. My entire focus is on Celtic. Now, there's another generation coming through below me in terms of age who may have that. They may have that same feeling. You know, if they don't feel connected to something, because it's all about connections here with a new generation. It's the instant gratification, your devices, it's connection, it's social media, it's all of this, right? And if you don't feel connected, then you're not going to commit. And I think that the club are missing that. They're completely missing the fact that we've got a new generation coming through, that if you don't look after them and make them feel connected and engaged to the football club, they will be completely disconnected and they'll go and find something else to do, John. Because our generation, I mean, I don't know. I would be very interested to see actually the age profile of a Celtic season ticket holder. I really would. They need to start thinking about that. There's a whole generation who could be lost to Celtic, who could be lost to Scottish football.
Well, I don't think there's much doubt about that, is there? You know, I had this conversation yesterday with someone basically essentially saying there are so many distractions now.
Mm-hmm.
And you are asking people who are maybe on the fence about committing to the thing, whether they want to take massive time out their day, and potentially, as Patrick said, people coming from all over the country, coming from Ireland as well, taking entire weekends out and spending a pile of money and not getting any respect back or return for that on the pitch. So they're treated as second-class citizens unless they're in the corporates. And also, on top of that, as we've spoken about many times, the infrastructure is crumbling. You know, so you have issues where, you know, people are sitting there, and let's be honest, especially this time of year, you're in the freezing cold, driving rain, and you're sitting for 90 minutes and potentially watching a load of rubbish because the people sitting opposite you, for most part, are sitting on the other side of the stand, and the nice heated seats are not basically invested in any way the same as you are. They don't care about that experience. They just care the fact that you are there. They want you to keep coming no matter what they're serving up, and that is their dream. It's just, you know, to have minimal input and maximum output. They want us to be going buck mad every year with enthusiasm for a team they've spent a couple of coppers on. So it is, you know, meanwhile they're sitting hoarding all the money. Mm-hmm. Like the you know, again, they're like, I was writing about it this morning, and it's like they're like these doomsday preppers, you know, preparing for some Armageddon that's only in their imagination. And that sort of paralysis, that cowardice extends to then just hoarding all the money and making sure that prophecy that they are so afraid of is entirely self-fulfilling. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's beyond, anyway, it is beyond belief how we've got to this point. But, you know, in saying on a few things there, Monty, get well soon, mate. I hope you're okay. Finances, I think someone broke it down as well as I don't know where they got the figures. The collective say it was down by about 15% or something like that overall, the revenue. In terms of the women with opinions on here, I mean, we've seen it, as you say, that they get absolutely tore into. And what's hilarious about it is like, you would think everyone that was getting tore into them used to be professional football players, you know, or coaches, and have like somehow their opinion is more valid because they played football in school. You know, I don't know where guys get the entitlement to just dismiss. So some of the most passionate supporters I have that follow me on the Twitter are women, and they're at every game, and they are just as passionate, just as knowledgeable, you know. And again, unless you're a coach, don't be banging into other people as if you get some sort of your opinion is much more obvious than it's the extra degree of contempt that they get Because I've said on here, the easiest way to get into a fight on here is on any social media is to offer an opinion on a player, good or bad, but offer a definite opinion without a whole load of caveats about he might be Maradona, but right now, he looks like a peg-leg pirate, with a hook for a hand and an eye patch, and he's trying to play football, so that's, again, if you want to start an argument, that's how you do it. But then the added thing is, as soon as it's a woman that's involved in that, the level of contempt is just wild. And I think someone pointed out in their comments earlier on, we're all big, brave laddies. They wouldn't say it to their faces. Do you know what I mean? We'd never say it to their faces, but, behind their screen, they're all big and brave and taking out all their mammy issues on some poor girl that's just trying to give a comment on the football. And I think what was important also to note, Patrick, was, where did you watch the game on your stag night, as someone else was asking? Not your stag night, your friend's stag night, your stag day. Were you travelling back at that point, or did you get to see it?
No, I did. I got to see it. I was in it's a newly opened sports bar called the Camden, which is in, I think it's the south of Dublin. Which was let me tell you, after drinking from Friday lunchtime all the way till 3 a.m. and Saturday night, Sunday morning, that half-hour walk was pretty brutal. It didn't feel like half an hour, and the first half felt even more brutal. Let me tell you. But the second half cheered us all up a wee bit, and we got to watch, most of the Rangers Hearts game before the flight as well, which, started off as a good laugh, but then sort of petered off. But I did get to see the game, and half the stag do went mental for the Arojo goal. Half of them did not.
Enough said, Patrick. You need to choose your friends.
Yeah, keeping bad company there, Patrick.
Yes. I'm going to bring up some of these comments before we dive into how we line up, shape and personnel for tomorrow night's game. Dylan McCutcheon says, any news or updates on any meetings that took place? We don't, Dylan, but what we can promise you is, as soon as the Green Brigade or the Celtic Fans Collective have an update, we will share it. So as soon as they've got an update, we'll know about it, and we will share it on here and on the socials as well. Jimmy Boy suggests Celtic Vic. She's good. Take a look. I have on TikTok, and Celtic Vic would be welcome on a Celtic State of Mind. And Stephen B says, even PJ rotates his mugs. Picks based on form. There you go. Sometimes I've even got two in the same show. Don't know if you've noticed that. We've also got Ian coming in to say, get Siobhan a hairn on. She'd no take any crap. I'll tell you what, she's outstanding. And obviously, I'm a big Celtic supporter as well. And Danielle Farrelly comes in to say, the wording of the financial report was bizarre. Talking about the sale of players, they used the word disposal. I noticed that. It was like the disposal of Nicholas Kuhn. And you just thought, listen, I know that in terms of modern football, everything's commoditized, but these people are human beings, and it is a very stale kind of wording of a financial report. But let's show a little bit of respect. These are guys that actually, going by previous form, we might even have them back at the football club at some point in the future. Hazel F, I am really conflicted on Europe this year. Never felt like this before, but so invested in the league this year, confused. John, do we stick with the same shape? That's the first question I'm going to ask you for tomorrow night.
I wouldn't. No, as I said earlier, I wouldn't stick with the same shape. I would be. Our midfield is really very weak, and I think we need to compensate for that. I would be going a 4-5-1. I saw people asking, and I was thinking it myself at the weekend. Could Sriracha do a job in the midfield? And because he looks like he could, and you just don't know. We have this all the time. It's just people suggesting players for different positions. But Sriracha is a bit of a baller, and he looks like he could play. And it's a shame to have someone sitting on the bench that's as good as that. So if you had a choice between, that's actually interesting now to think about it. If you had a choice between Sriracha and Bernardo, who would you choose?
Sriracha all day long.
Yeah.
All day long.
That's what I'm saying. Right. So I've just changed my mind on that then. We'll talk about Sriracha. I was looking at that midfield, John Lowe. So I would go sort of 4-5-1. I would have I actually would have Sriracha in there. I think he could do a job as a defensive midfielder. So I'd have Sriracha and Kalmak double pivot. You'd have McCowan, Negrin, and Negrin. I would have McCowan on the left or the right. So we don't really need a winger. It's just like a midfielder that's maybe played on the wing. I don't think that it's going to be that sort of game. We just need bodies in that midfield. And Svanchara up front. So, you can have one winger there with Taneke, and the rest of it is just load the midfield with whoever's going to stop us getting battered, because I do think it is going to be that sort of game. Mm-hmm. And I know we have played well against, but even the other teams we played against in Europe, where we got good results, they were going through a bad run at that time. Both Feyenoord were going through like a historically bad run of like 10 losses or something. Bologna were going through a terrible run of results as well. And Stuttgart are not. They are not going through a bad run of results. They are pretty much flying high for a club their size. So, I think it might be the most challenging game of the season, other than obviously the giants of Kairat Almaty. So I think we still have to, for me, we just need to work a way to get it through. But, even Martin O'Neill as a manager, they always seem reluctant to change shape, and I always thought that was overstated until we saw what Wilfred Nancy did. And it's just like, yeah, maybe it's not that great an idea. But I think we could live with a 4-5-1 in these games. I think it'd just keep us in the tie. And maybe we can sneak something. I don't see us going out and taking anyone at the cleaners or anything like that. Again, I'm trying to be realistic in order that we can get a victory rather than pessimistic and just saying, just not bother. But I reckon we need to keep it very, very tight to avoid being embarrassed. And I hope that's exactly what we do.
I think starting off with that, flooding the midfield, Patrick, would seem like a good idea to me, because you're protecting your back line as well. And then you should have the personnel to make the changes if you need to go back to 4-3-3 at some point during the game. Would you change shape? Do you expect Martin O'Neill to do that tomorrow night?
I would certainly do it. As John says, managers are quite reluctant to do that in the modern game. I would be quite happy with a 4-5-1, try and at least get some control in the game by flooding the midfield, even if you're sort of you're only leaving one guy up front. And Vanchara, if we go with him, I don't think he's the best hold-up guy. More of an in-behind player, but then you could try and play to his strengths if Stuttgart end up playing a high line. I was thinking before we came on that maybe 4-4-2 or something, because I only basically trust two of our midfielders, and that's McGregor and Negrin. Midfielders available for selection anyway. Mm-hmm. Bernardo, I think Bernardo might be slightly more hard done by than McCowan or Hatate, because I think McCowan and Hatate have played a few more minutes than Bernardo. But I do remember, was it the Dundee game in the Cup? I think he played the first 45. I forgot he was playing. We obviously didn't play that well, and then he was hooked at half time. I think it was him and Vuka. So again, he's not impressed at all the last sort of 12 months. Certainly looking at the midfield, you're looking at McGregor and Negrin as the only two that are sort of definitely in there. Forrest offers a bit more defensive qualities. I think you have to play Taneke based on form, and then you could make an argument for Vanchara and Maeda up top. I don't know if Ian Atchell's fit or available. You could make an argument for him coming into the side. And obviously, O'Neill was a fan of playing several strikers in his very first spell. And, if we're under the cosh a bit, maybe need to hold it up, playing the counter. I don't think having two strikers on the pitch is too bad an idea. I suppose the one benefit of this game and players that are available is that guys like Oxlade-Chamberlain is not going to feature here. And so he has time on the training pitch to get himself ready for Hibs, get himself ready for then that, 3 games in a week, Rangers, Aberdeen, Rangers. And hopefully he can play a significant part in those games. And then other guys that aren't available. So there is, a small silver line. But yeah, I'd certainly, change it up a bit. You know, if you do end up playing McCowan, that's obviously saving the legs of another guy who can come in at the weekend. So I think I agree with John and yourselves that we will need to be very compact tomorrow night to avoid a do. And then, you know, you look at games in the past, and funnily enough, I was watching highlights from the Real Madrid game from a few years ago, just to, you know, torture myself, I think, compare it to this season. And you can actually play pretty well in a game and end up losing, you know, by several goals, and you think you're a bit unlucky there. So I'm hoping that's not tonight. I don't doubt the players will be up for it with Martin O'Neill in charge and big European night. But obviously, for the sake of momentum and keeping this run going, you just don't really want to lose heavily. So, you know, if I was to call it just now, I think the game at Parkhead will probably end in a draw. But I wouldn't be opposed to a 4-5-1. I was thinking 4-4-2 earlier. Either of those, I would be happy to go with. But if we don't end up tinkering and it ends up being a sort of variation of 4-3-3, I do worry about who that third midfielder is going to be.
That's a big concern for me because McGregor plays, he's a captain. He actually, I felt, played much better when the Ox came on. I think it kind of allowed him to carry the ball a lot more in the second half. And he's a captain, and of course he's going to play, and he's a leader. Nygren, because of all the attributes that we've already spoken about on this show, you know, good for a goal, good for setting a goal up. Nygren, he starts, but it is that troublesome third midfielder. And you asked the question about minutes. So let's have a wee look at that. Rio Atati this season has played 2,225 minutes, 36 appearances for Celtic. Then Luke McCowan, 1,353 minutes, 30 appearances, many of which came off the bench. Obviously, a lot of these games, he's only getting a few minutes. So you've got Rio Atati way up at 2,300. You've got Luke McCowan at 1,300. And then Paulo Bernardo only 543 minutes. So he is becoming a player that you don't even expect to start a game. I mean, when you look at his profile and you look at the fact that maybe you need another pivot to sit next to Callum McGregor, in terms of profile, he's your man. But you're just not confident putting him in, Paulo Bernardo. And obviously, once Engels comes back, this is the thing as well, John, people criticising Engels. This is the dilemma you're given when he's not available. This is the dilemma because, but I'm sorry, Bernardo doesn't fill those shorts, neither does Luke McCowan.
Yeah, well, even fill the shoes. I don't know what he's doing with his shorts, but anyway.
You know what that is? It's the shorts with the numbers on it, John. I always refer
to
winning the shorts rather than winning the jersey.
Right, so look, the reality is Bernardo is there. That's his contribution. He's there, but we've been through 3 managers technically this season, and technically 4 actually, but 3 for sure, and he hasn't featured really. There's a reason for that, and when he comes on, we're all seeing what that reason is.
Yeah.
So there is. You can't wish a player into form. I wish he was a player. I mean, I was there the game where he scored against Rangers, and that's not something I'll forget in a hurry. But that was a long time ago now, and he hasn't come on at all. And in fact, he's really quite poor. And when he has been given a chance, as Patrick pointed out, you just forget he's there. He adds nothing at all. So we can't wish him into form. So Bernardo, as he was previously, yes, he could do a job. You can forget about that. I'm not sure you could even consider him for this. I genuinely, as we just said, I would rather see Sarachi in there than Bernardo. I think he would give you an awful lot more. And I think he's more likely to get you a goal as well. I know it's a big ask to move someone in positions like that, but, from left back to defensive midfielder, is it that big an ask? You're not asking him to be a creative genius. So, I mean, that's what I would be looking at. I think it's a shame, and this is one of the big, massive issues we've had with the squad management or lack of squad management. It's just guys like Bernardo should have been gone ages ago. Hatate should have been gone ages ago. Even Maeda should have been gone. And again, because we haven't done that, we're not in a position to buy people. You've got Chris Mackay bleating about the size of the wage bill, but at the same time, if you were doing your job properly, or there were systems in place to allow the job to be done properly, there wouldn't be an issue with the wage bill, because you'd be getting all these guys, off the wages. And to prove that the job's not being done properly, and this is no slight on Martin O'Neill and his team, because they were under the cosh and desperate and doing whatever they could. The fact that we offered Mvuka a 4.5-year contract or something, we offered that boy.
I know.
And he's now firmly ensconced on the Bollocks bush with Balak Wisher.
Yes. So, we've got a carpool again. He's in the carpool, isn't he? Who's Scott Bain when you need a driver?
So, that is just shows you, it's just yet another indication of the absolute chaos that has been this year, and how all those years of managed decline have led to this outcome, which is just chaos. So we're left with guys, and this is the problem with the team all year. There's a whole load of guys that don't want to be there. There's a whole load of guys that shouldn't be there. There's a whole load of guys approaching the end of their career. There's a whole load of guys out of form, and it's trying to pick. It's how few guys in a game are having a bad game. It's what's defining it at the moment. Because nobody's having a great game, for most part. It's just how few guys are having a really bad game. And that was, I have to say, probably the funniest moment of the weekend, when Martin O'Neill interrupted Araujo's interview. That was absolutely sensational. Did you ask him about his first half? I thought it was brilliant. And then someone actually took it seriously. And,
I've seen that, John.
And they went and they actually analysed his first half and then said, no, he was actually posted missing at this goal, and he did that mistake and he had that mistake and all the rest of it. So, yeah. So, but, that aside, this is where I think we need, as I've said repeatedly now, apologise, but I'm sort of anxious about this. I don't want us to get embarrassed, and there is the potential here for us to be embarrassed. And, less so maybe because we're at home, but certainly when we get to their home, I would hope that we're in this game and get in the game to the extent where if we're going to win it, we have to win it tomorrow. And I know what I'm saying means defensive, but I'm not sure what our chances are. I think our chances of getting battered are higher than our chances of winning the game, which is why I'm suggesting a more defensive line-up and try and, take a points on the break and hope, they make a mistake.
You mentioned a player there, Mvuka, and it's incredible how someone who is part of the first team squad can disappear from view pretty quickly. Balakwisha's another one, of course. And then Iheanacho is the third player that I'm a wee bit concerned about, Patrick, because of the three I've just mentioned, Iheanacho is in the Europa League squad. As we know, Mvuka's not and Balakwisha's not. Adamu is. But these guys that all of a sudden they're in the starting position, then they drop to the bit and then they're gone. Now, I don't think Martin Neal's been brutal for the sake of it, but it just shows you how ruthless he can be. But it is a concern, as John says, that we've got a player in Mvuka who's played 45 minutes, right? And he's just disappeared. Now, there's no word of an injury. Same with Iheanacho, disappeared, no word of an injury. I've been impressed with Iheanacho. I really have. I've been impressed with what he has provided, other than that first appearance back from the current injury that he's had. That first appearance back, he looked really, really rusty. That's natural. Is it a case of O'Neill looking at a scenario that Kevin Graham and I spoke about on Monday and saying, right, I'm going to stick with 14 or 15 guys I know I can trust and see all the rest of them? It doesn't really matter. They're out this kind of circle at the moment. Do you think he's that ruthless?
Yeah, I think he's definitely got it in him. I think we're all aware how clever Martin O'Neill is, and he's definitely got a different public and private sort of persona and character about him. I'm sure he obviously comes across as this lovely funny guy, and he is. But obviously he's a football manager, so he needs to be ruthless. In the dressing room at half time at Rugby Park when we're 2-0 down. As you say, it is a bit of a mystery. When you see guys who maybe haven't played so well and they're sort of bombed out the squad, you sort of question it less. And Buka, he was certainly keen to take a man on, but he was always sort of trying to cut inside, and then he put in a few crosses which almost seemed floated. It was like he was playing with a sort of flyaway football. There was no real sort of pace or power or accuracy to it. I think I'm right in saying he's the boy that he would have failed the medical. We're going to sign him permanently. He failed the medical, so we signed him on loan. So It is a bit of a mystery, but I think you're right in what you're saying. It's going to be down to trust when you're in such a sort of intense environment. I mean, you're talking earlier about the stress that Callum McGregor and the pressure that he must be feeling, and the release valve when he's celebrating with the fans at full time on Sunday there. You do need guys that you can trust, and I think in a sort of funny way, he's still finding out who those guys are, and
Yeah,
maybe the number is actually below 14, which would be a bit of a problem for us, because as we've discussed, you're not trusting McCowan, you're not trusting Bernardo, but then you're having to play Hatate, who's then getting hooked at half time. You're bringing on guys like Tuneki and Hook and Yang, so I don't know if it's maybe a sort of constantly changing the guys that he can trust. Um, but it would certainly be one explanation. I think he's always struggled for fitness the last sort of 4 or 5 years, Iheanacho. Ever since probably ever since that COVID season he had with Leicester, where he scored quite a few goals. His career's maybe struggled a bit, so you don't know if maybe that's a factor, whether he just doesn't fancy him in training or whatever. I think it was a Utrecht game he came on, and he played okay. And then again, you just sort of don't see him. So I wouldn't be surprised, Utrecht Europa League. Tomorrow night Stuttgart Europa League, he'll maybe play a part somewhat. Again, I think that could be an option for us playing 4-4-2 if you have him as a sort of hold-up player and either Maeda or Vanchara running in behind, making runs. So we do have some options. We do have a bigger squad now, despite the injuries that we're still racking up. But as you say, it's about fitness. It's about who you can trust. It's about guys that are on form. And it's the story of our season, really. I mean, it's sort of hard to believe it's only the middle of February. The season has it's the season that will not end, and still we've got such a long way to go. I mean, you think to yourselves that there's only 12 more league games to go, but at the same time, it still feels like quite a long way away until we even get to the split. So there's a long way to go, but I have full faith in Martin O'Neill. It's probably the only reason why I still think we're going to win the league. Even that game on Sunday there, sitting at 2-2, you think to yourself, we've done it twice this week already. I wouldn't put it past us to do it a third time. And I'm not saying I was confident of that, but I didn't put it past us. And it's certainly what's keeping me going, and obviously it's what's keeping the players and the rest of the fans going as well. So, if it's about trust, again, my trust is fully in Martin O'Neill, and whoever he decides to trust out there in the park, he'd get my full support as well.
You're talking.
Can I just say?
Sorry, John.
Sorry, Paul John. Can I just say? I need to say in the comments we get Craig McLean. I think that's twins or twin. I don't know what he's trying to say there. He says, John, I'm getting the sleeper from Fort William to London, flying to Zurich, then 3 trains to Stuttgart. Thanks for peeing on my bonfire. I was just like, I didn't, mate. I just like, sorry, Craig. That's some journey, by the way. That's some commitment. But I'm not trying to. I want us to keep it tight so that we're still in the game, so you actually get a decent game to watch, and not something that's a foregone conclusion. And Godspeed on your journey, my friend. Can I just add? The Mvuka thing isn't a mystery to me at all, but the Iheanacho thing is really is. I don't know what's going on there. And I mentioned it, I think, online, and someone said, oh, he's unfit and garbage and shouldn't be anywhere near us. I completely disagree with that. He didn't look unfit, and people are calling him overweight, although he's been in training now for a significant period of time. I don't see that at all. But especially because it's Martin O'Neill, and he's actually calling for someone to, to hold the ball up. As Vanchara, as you said, and we've already stated he's not the man to do that. Iheanacho is, and he was excellent in games, bringing guys into play. And I'm really mystified as to why he's not there. As Patrick said, I think there might be a good chance that he might be in it tonight, but just because of the way that we have options. I don't know. I don't think, for instance, after watching Adamu, I'd said when Adamu scored that back heel, beauty of a back heel goal, that maybe he's better in front, maybe he's better instinctively in front of goal, because the video I'd seen of his last 50 shots at goal was not inspiring in any way, shape, or form. And the pressure, or not the pressure, the expectations on a Celtic front man at the moment are, if you're just waiting for things to happen, it's never going to happen. We are not creating enough chances. So you have to be in there creating something yourself. That you have to be making things happen. Because, I mean, it used to be the case, it's not gone that far back, but if Kyogo get 10 touches in a game, the stats guys would be going wild. Thinking that was fantastic. That was one of his most productive games. We haven't been very good at it all season. And we're not good at it now. Our chance creation is really poor.
Yeah.
And we are not just lining guys up, except under the reign of Wilfred, which is obviously, that's what happens when you get 10 guys in the box. But we're not, and not 10 defenders. So we're not lining up good chances for guys. They are having to make things happen. I mean, you take the goals at the weekend. Spanchara, that flick on to Nigrin made that happen. Taneke made that goal happen. Spanchara again made the goal for Araujo. He made it happen. You're not just going to be, tapping in chances. It's just not the way we're playing. So in actual I would love to have a bit of inside information about that, but I don't have any. But I would love to know what's happening there.
Yeah, first thing I'm going to say, Craig. See guys like Craig. Honestly, I tip my hat to them. Unbelievable commitment to Celtic, and I know Patrick and Declan and various other Acsomers have done a lot of the away days. Kevin Graham used to, back in his younger days, his carefree days, he used to jump on trains, planes and automobiles. JP Mason does it. Natasha Meikle, never in Scotland, always watching Celtic somewhere. Thanks everybody for your comments. We'll run through a few of them at the end of this show. Chilpill 1888. Apparently Iheanacho did pick up an injury. That's why he's not been in the squad. He's back training. I'm glad to hear it, because I'll tell you something, I do think, John, right? See if you've got Nchara or Maeda playing behind him, just feeding off his scraps and allowing him to hold the ball up, you might have a two up top partnership that might well work. I'm not putting Adamu into that equation at the moment because I've not seen enough of him. I don't know what his attributes really are at the moment. Stephen B, never been so torn about Europe. Always urged us in Europe to be our best, but the board's downsizing of the team has led us to not have the tools for it. I get that frustration and the dilemma, Stephen. Here's just a quick back of a cigarette packet. Luke, if you're talking financials, John, and you mentioned a couple of these figures already, I know it's difficult to say what is the differential between playing Europa League football and Champions League football up to the same stage, and not only prize money but gate receipts and everything else that it brings. And I estimate around the £30 million mark. Some people might say it's 26, 25, whatever. But I looked at the figures over the last few years, and I reckon it's around 30 million you lose for not being prepared or good enough to get through the qualifier. So there's £30 million straight off the bat that, as an executive team, your decisions have lost the football club. And then you look at that thing you mentioned earlier, John, about squad management, whereby we sell this to the players that come in. It comes to a certain point, end of the cycle, the sweet spot, whatever you want to call it, and then we sell you, right? And we've not been able to do that to Engels, Maeda, or Yang, right? And now you could probably chuck Rio in there as well. I don't know if there's been any bids, but we know there have been bids for Maeda, Yang, and Engels. Was it time to sell all three? Maybe a wee bit premature for Engels, but at that price, you would have taken it, right? And that, I think, would come to something in the region of another £45 million. We don't know how much Maeda was going for, but I think it is the peak of his powers. I'm going to be conservative and say 15 million. But between him and Yang, £20 million, I don't think that was unusual to suggest that. So there's 75 million, John, that you've lost just this season. Just this season, with poor planning, poor squad management, poor executive governance. 75 million pounds.
Well, did you mention Trusty in that list?
No, I did not. But you're right, Trusty. I mean, what we're talking about Trusty, probably. I mean, we're definitely making a profit on him.
Well, the rumor was that the bid was 15 million.
15 million quid.
So we're making 9 million there. But look, there's no other job where you could look at, no other business where you could look at the way things have been managed and run and the consequences, financial consequences of that have. Anyone looking at that objectively would have that entire board sacked. If we had, an active shareholder. So, you know, in lots of other businesses, you guys take a big shareholding and then try and get the board removed. So if we had shareholders like that, they would be getting these guys out, lock, stock and barrel, no matter what their position is, because it's just unjustifiable. There is not a single thing that they've done that makes sense. And, you know, not to mention attacking the fan base and keeping them out. And didn't I tell you the last couple of weeks when we started, how many times has Wilson called for unity now and done hee-haw? And he just wake up and open his window and shout unity out to the world. Do you know what I mean? Has he just got a wee unity scarf that he holds as he walks along? Just, what's he doing? He hasn't done a thing. Not done a thing. And now we're looking at this run-in, the tightest run-in we've had in a very, very long time. And the last time things were going this badly, there were no fans. And now, you know, we complained about that, and now we're actively making sure that the fans don't have and the funny thing about your man Lawrence Donegan, and when you were arguing with him, was he was basically saying, you know, that those fans the weekend demonstrated that the Green Brigade and you know, all those guys, you know, aren't required. Who do you think was at the game? Who do you think that was? Do you know what I mean? Well, for the most part, doing all the singing. Who do you think was there? So it's wild. But look, I know the fans want to do their best. It's to, you know, but as we've spoken about multiple times, it's generations now of not singing unless someone else is singing. You're singing along with it, and you know, and that sort of energy. And when you're talking about the age profile, that's another massive thing. So when I'm sitting usually round about me, well, everyone there's about my age. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be bouncing up and down for the whole game, you know, waving flags and chanting and all the rest of it. But the age, I'd be fascinated, just like you said, to see, it's a very good point, to see the age profile of a fan. I think, like in many other industries where the world is changing, the age profile, like even in my job, the age profile of advisors in my job has massively increased now. You don't get a lot of young people coming into the industry because it's, you know, it's a lot more difficult than it used to be. And, you know, and it's the same with the fans. You know, as I say, they have so many other options, these kids. And to go along and be mistreated and all the rest of it. So if they're not getting to bounce around and enjoy themselves, you know, it's going to be a serious problem. But it's far more important. How many times was it Araujo, and I don't know how many of the players said the fans made a massive difference at the weekend? How many of them said that?
I know. So,
you know, and the board's contribution to that is that's a really interesting point. We'll take that on board. Well, once again, Brian, shout unity out the window, Brian, right? And then we'll just forget all about it, you know, and do nothing. And I think they're doing nothing. And as I said last week, is because the CEO's on his way out, couldn't care less.
See the thing, John, at the end of the season, they need to look in the mirror and ask themselves a simple question: did we do everything we could do to salvage this? And part of that is restoring the atmosphere at Celtic Park by getting the fans back in.
You got your words mixed up there, Paul John. You said salvage. I think you meant sabotage.
Well, that's true. Yeah, sabotage. That's exactly what it is. That's how it seems. But you're right. And you look at that at the end of the season. Did we do everything we could do to make this work? Well, at this moment in time, the answer is no. Because there's a massive void at the moment. And opposition managers have mentioned it. Our own players have mentioned it. Martin O'Neill at some point said, look, I will work as a mediator. I'll speak to the fans. It's all there. Get it done. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. We're above 40,000. Just a wee reminder, 40,000 subscribers of the person who is going to get a goodie bag. Not sure what's in it yet, John, but something will be in it. Stu Boy, 23 is the guy. Right, so get in touch, Stu Boy, and we'll send you a swag bag out. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again tomorrow at 12:30 on a Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail.